Okay, we are going to do some notes today for our chapter 1C, which is on solving equations with fractions. Now, generally, I don't like dealing with fractions in an equation, so I'm going to show you today how we can get rid of those. Here we have two equations. Both of them have a fraction in them. Now, the secret that I'm going to show you today is that we're still going to draw the line down the equal sign. Now, we notice we have two parts to this equation. We have this part and we have this part. Now, the trick that we're going to do today in order to eliminate fractions is we're going to pick the biggest bottom denominator. There's only one denominator here, and that is a 3. So we're going to take that 3, and we're going to, in order to get rid of it, we're going to have to times this part by 3. But we're going to do that to every single part that we have. So on this left of it, it's going to cancel out, and we're left with 2x. And over here, when we times by 3, 20 times 3 is 60. And then we have an equation that actually makes sense, and we have no fractions left in it. And then from here we can solve, divided by 2, and x equals 30. So let's see how that looks when we do it over here. Draw your line down the equal sign. The first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to look at all my parts. I'm going to mark all my parts. Now, when I say parts, this is all one part because there's no add and subtract. So this is all one big part. I'm going to take my biggest bottom number, which is a 10, and I'm going to times all of my parts by 10. The 10 on top and bottom here cancel each other out because 10 divided by 10 is 1. And what I'm left with is 2y equals, and 10 times 10 is 100. Last thing I need to do is divide by 2. And my final answer here is y equals 50. So that's an easy look at how to eliminate a fraction from an equation. And we're going to look at some that are a little more in depth in just a second. But first, let's talk about something. So one of the things that we need to remember is that a fraction is just two different operations. A fraction is two different operations wrapped up into one. So if I were to say 2/3 times by 12, if I don't even want to have to deal with a fraction, I could write it out like this. This means times by 2. So whatever is on top is a multiply problem. And whatever's on bottom is a divide by problem. So I could say 12, since I know that's divide, 12 divided by 3 is 4. So that's going to be 4. And then 4 times 2 is 8. I'm going to write that out again so you can see that and see if that makes sense. Let's redo what we just did. So remember, this is the same as times by 2 and divide by 3. And if I'm using 12 here, 12 times 2, I could do it this order. 12 times 2 is 24, and then 24 divided by 3 equals 8. Either way that you do, either order that you do these in is going to give you the same answer. So we're going to try one more just to see if that makes sense. So let's try it with 27. Remember that the top is just a multiply. This is times by 2. And the bottom is divided by 3. It doesn't matter which order I do it. But I do know if I look at this and multiply, that's going to give me a big number. So I'm going to see if it's going to be easier to do this first. 27 divided by 3. I know that 27 divided by 3 is going to give me 9, and I know that 9 times 2 is going to give me 18. So 2/3 times 27 is 18, because 27 divided by 3 is 9, and 9 times 2 is 18. So let's look at how that's going to work in some of these problems over here. Here's two problems a little bit bigger than the last one. The first thing we're always going to do is draw our line down the equal sign. Now let's talk about how many parts this has. This is one part, this is one part, and this is one part. If we look over at the other problem, draw your line down the equal sign. Here's one part, here's one part, and here is one part. This is super helpful if you do this, because then you don't end up missing anything when you're doing the getting rid of your fraction. So my biggest denominator on this side is a 4. So I'm going to take each of my parts and times it by a 4. In my first section, my 4's eliminate, and I'm left with negative 3m. In my second part, 4 times 3 is 12. And since that's a positive 12, I'm going to write plus 12. And then my third part is 8 times 4 is 32. And from here, we should know how to solve this. This is just going to be exactly like we've been doing the last many days. This will be, did I write that down? 32 minus 12 is going to be 20. And 20 divided by negative 3 is going to give me a fraction. So m equals, you can say it either way. You can say negative 6 2/3, or you can say negative 20 over 3. So take a minute and hit pause on the video, and I want you to try seeing which parts you would multiply on this one in order to eliminate your fraction. Once you've paused the video and written it out, then I want you to unpause the video and see if yours matches mine. So here's what we should do. Biggest bottom number is a 2, so all of my sections I'm multiplying by 2. My 2's here eliminate, and let's just see what we have left. 2 times 18 is 36, and that's negative. We have 5r left here, and 2 times 12 is 24, and that's positive. From here, we are back where we started. Two-step equation. Move the part that's not connected. 5r equals negative 60. And then we're going to move the part that is connected. Divided by 5. So r equals negative 12. So that's how we're going to use fractions to be our friends. If you have any problem that you have that has fractions in it, we can use this method to eliminate. Let's try a couple more. Here is our first one. I have sections. Let's go find out where my sections are. Now, if I look at this originally, this gives me a little bit of panic because all of the parts have fractions in them. So watch how simple this is when we actually can do this trick on something that includes this many fractions. My biggest denominator is a 6. So I'm going to take all of my parts and times them by 6. On this here, our 6's cancel out and we're left with 5. On this here, 6 times 1 is 6, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. And that's a subtract. And here, my 6's cancel out, and I'm left with 1x. Now, if you notice, this equation is much easier than looking at the one above it, but it's the same thing. Let's look at this equation on the right. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to find all of my parts. Be careful because this little one right here is its own part. The next thing I notice is all of my bottom numbers are a 3, so this is going to be easy. I can go times all of my parts by 3. And let's see what we have left. 3's here cancel, negative 11. Right here, 3 times A is 3A. On this one, the 3's cancel, and I'm left with a 10, and there's a negative in front of it. And on the last one, my 3's cancel, and I'm left with a 2, and that's a positive. Now, once again, this equation looks doable, whereas this equation up here is kind of scary. From here, we will do what we've been doing the last 2 units. Put the things together that matches and solve for the letter. That is all of your notes that you have for eliminating fractions. I'm going to give you the homework pass-off problem because I want you to pause right here and I want you to try this problem. And then I want you to come back and check your work and see if yours matches mine. So pause the video, see what you're going to do on this. Remember that you're going to pick the biggest bottom number, pick the biggest denominator, make sure that you mark all your parts, because if you forget to mark all of your parts, you're going to miss some, and then you're going to simplify. And then from there, it should be an equation that you're going to understand. So hit pause on the video, give this problem a try, and then come back and see how you did. Okay, now that we're back, my biggest bottom number is a 12. So I'm going to take a 12 and times each of my parts. Here's a part, here's a part, and here's a part. I'm going to take each of my numbers and times it by 12. Now remember, a fraction is just times by the top, divide by the bottom. These 12s cancel out. I'm left with 18. 12 times 1 is 12, divided by 2 is 6. 12 divided by 3, I'm going to do that one first because it's easier, is 4, and 4 times 8 is 32. And 12 times 1 is 12, divided by 2 is 6p. That should be what your simplified problem looks like. From there, you're going to be able to put parts together that match. And now we're back to our 2-step equation. Move the part that's not connected. And then move the part that is. It's going to end up being a fraction. The most important part that you need to make sure that you got is this part right here. If you can eliminate your fraction and get an equation that looks like this, it's going to make things so much easier. That's it for your notes on eliminating fractions.